Hello, hello. Hi, guys. How are you? Welcome to Success Pod with Tendai Dara. I'm so excited today to be joined by a colleague, a friend in Christ, and a fellow African like me. So today I'm joined by Joy Titus from South Africa. And before I introduce her, let me give you a bit of a background of what Success Pod is all about and why we thought this show is very important in such a time in Africa. So Success Pod is a show that I can't say I introduced, we introduced as young people in Africa to try to celebrate our own, challenge the status quo that we are in, and also get to discuss about issues that are affecting young people in Africa. So we'll be talking about quite a lot of things, here on Success Pod. You see diverse number of people, you see different guests from different walks of lives. So just make sure you share this live video, ask questions in the comment section, and let's get to engage. So today I have Joy. Joy is a content creator from South Africa. She's doing amazing stuff. She's a born-again Christian, which is one of the most important things that I respect her for. So Joy, welcome to Success Pod with Tendai Dara. This is our show. It's not my show. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Tendai. Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Joy is a content. Okay, so let's get into it, Joy. I wouldn't want to waste time. I was just trying to see if I can share the video because most people are used to my personal account, so they might probably be looking for it on my personal account. So I was just trying to share it so that people get to access and also tune in. So yeah. Who is Joy? I know for me, I'm familiar with you. I know what you do. I celebrate you already, but people might want to know why Joy? Who is Joy Titus?
That's a very interesting question because I always say that when I attend different meetings for different purposes, I kind of always have to narrow down my bio to be relevant to that specific purpose because I want to believe that there's so much more to all of us than meets the eye. But I think for the purpose of this talk show, Joy is a 23-year-old Christian African woman. I live in South Africa, born and bred in rural Limpopo, but currently residing in Cape Town. I'm studying in the University of Cape Town. I'm currently a candidate of a master's by dissertation in climate science. I am a digital content creator, and my YouTube channel is pretty fresh. It's just over 9 to 10 months old right now. And yeah, I totally believe in self-development. I'm a self-development advocate. I believe anything and anyone can be developed. And I live my life every day to try and push that narrative and show young people how it can be done.
Okay, thank you very much, Joy. So most people might be wondering why did I choose Joy and why South Africa? Personally, I celebrate and honor Africans because I know they're doing amazing stuff. Most of it which is not being recognized probably by the Western media and by even other African media houses. So I chose Joy because these are the people who are shaping the way we think. They are content creators. What they create, we consume, and it sticks onto our subconscious mind. So these are the people that are creating the future generation, people that are helping us to redefine and rebrand Africa. So let's get into it, Joy. Today I'm talking about rebranding Africa, which has been one of the biggest that we have been having as Africans. Because if you look at it, poverty, unemployment, all of these, they are not as bad as they are, presented in the news. It's simply a lack of branding. So if I say Africa, if I was to say define Africa, describe Africa rather in one word, what would that word be?
I think simply it would be rich. And I know this is probably a very unpopular opinion, obviously, because of what we've seen Africa being portrayed as in the media. But literally, that's the word that comes to my mind, rich. Africa is rich. And I can expand more on that subject. But yeah, that's just my one word.
Wow. So that's very interesting. And I wouldn't have said it better because I believe Africa is rich in everything, in tradition, in natural resources, in everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I love about Africa. So moving on, Joy, I have seen, maybe probably is from my end only, but I've seen that the media and content creates it actually, controls the way we think. it controls the subconscious mind. Each and every time you see a commercial of an African being played probably on TV. And a few days ago, I was so touched when I looked at this other advert that was being played. It's a very old advert, by the way. It's a Chinese advert where a black man was being put in a washing machine, and then the end
Wow.
result was, a white man, and they were doing
Wow.
this in the name of promoting washing powder. And then I was wondering, why an
Wow.
African? Why us? Why would they use a black person on a commercial? So yeah, it was so touching. And then I was like, we need to do something. So
Yes.
probably the only one who's not happy, but taking it from you, Joy, are you happy with how Africa is being portrayed in the global media?
Honestly speaking, I wouldn't say I'm unhappy and I wouldn't say I'm happy. I would say I'm concerned. I'm concerned because there obviously seems to be a narrative that is being pushed by the global mainstream media in terms of what Africa is about. Like literally when you hear students from international or people who are in foreign countries talk about Africa, it's always portrayed as some sort of a jungle, some sort of a desert, some sort of a place out of nowhere where people are really poor and they're really lost and they need to be rescued and they need help and they're stranded and they're helpless. But I think that's very problematic, and that's why I'm saying I'm not unhappy. I'm not unhappy because we also do not want to overlook all the different platforms that are trying their level best to push Africa to the forefront and to portray the best of Africa. But at the same time, the mainstream media, I think what they project is very negative. And I mean, just looking back on the whole COVID-19 pandemic and how it started, the whole conversation of vaccinations and how they needed to be first tested in Africa because I guess we are the most vulnerable for tests and trials and stuff like that. So I think I'm concerned in terms of the narrative that is being pushed. It's been pushed for decades and decades. We were born into this narrative. And I think right now it's quite disappointing that in 2020, Africa is still being portrayed as a poor, helpless continent that needs constant rescue from Western countries, which I think is very problematic. And I think I'm concerned because we do not want our future generations to obviously experience the continent the way we did. We do not want them to experience the stigma from foreign internationals the way we did growing up. So that's very, very concerning. So I'm definitely not happy about it, but I do think that there's something that we can do to change the narrative because that's the most important part. The danger of a single story, as Chimamanda would say.
Yes, that is so powerful, and I'm so happy that you quoted someone that inspires me, someone who's on a mission and on a journey to rebrand Africa. So, what you said actually relates to what happened. When I went to Egypt sometime last year for the World Youth Forum. There are some people that are actually wondering to say, do you guys in Africa wear shoes? Do you guys in Africa live like in decent homes? Do you know a TV? And I was like, guys, Africa is not a jungle. We do not live in bushes. By the way, I always say that if you look at it indirectly, Africa feeds the world. We provide the world with raw material
Yes,
that they use. Africa dresses the world. Africa
yes,
does everything for the world. And people don't, there wouldn't be a world without Africa. Let's be honest, guys. I'm
yes.
saying, I'm not saying this because I'm an African, but that's the reality. And people should
Mm,
learn to appreciate what Africa is offering. I was listening to a speech by Akon on the city that is building in Senegal, and I was so
mm,
inspired when he was saying Africa simply lacks branding, but we have
mm.
everything. We have everything. What we need is simply brand and make sure we position ourselves, at a level that people can actually get to appreciate and say there is Joy Titus from South Africa. There is Tendai, and these are young people who are on a mission to build a future that we
Yeah,
all want, create an economy that we all want.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you were to get an opportunity probably on one of the biggest media platforms, let's say
yeah,
BBC, or maybe Fox News, to just talk about
yeah,
Africa, just for 45
yeah.
seconds, what would you say?
For 45 seconds. Oh my gosh. Okay, I would say first of all, Africa is a continent because unfortunately we still have people who are so dumb to believe that it's some country or whatever. So I would literally say Africa is a continent. Africa is a beautiful continent that is rich. in all sorts of ways. It is rich in natural resources. I mean, come on, we're talking gold, diamond, we're talking sugar, salt, you know, you can name it. And we are rich in diversity, we are rich in culture, we are rich in heritage, we are rich in life. And these people all over the world, the global market should actually realize that we feed their systems, we feed their economies, because most of the natural resources that they process are literally from us. So Africa is actually the backbone of wealth in the global market. That's literally what I would say.
Wow, wow, powerful, powerful. Thank you very much. So yeah, I think that's what we need, this opportunity where we get to share our African story from an African
Yeah.
perception. Because I know that, you know, so much has been said. I was unlucky to be a product of the education system that
Mm,
has history that was written by a white man, yet it talks about an African. So I think what we need, just like what Akon always say, to say Africa doesn't need aid, Africa doesn't need help. Africa
yeah.
is looking for an opportunity. Africa is looking for an ear to be heard. Africa simply wants, you know, space to show what it has. So it's
Mm,
quite sad to see what happens. The global media, they portray Africa in a way they want. I don't know their agendas, but what I know is that Africa has been named, you know, from all kinds of, you know, perceptions, and which is what
yeah.
we are trying to change here. So getting on to the most interesting part, Joey, what do you think is the role of young people, you and me, no matter what you are doing, no matter, you know, which field you are in, what you are studying? What do you think is the role of young people in rebranding Africa?
Honestly, I think there's a lot that we can do, and I would expand on it to say that taking up space has to be the first role. We need to take up space. You know, we can't, whether it's in politics, whether it's in media in itself, you know, whatever industry and whatever field, young people need to take up space. We can't isolate ourselves from the forefront of business. We can't isolate ourselves from the boardrooms where matters are being discussed and decisions are being made. So we need to be involved. We need to take up space. We need people to be brave enough to run, you know, and be to be in politics, to be in businesses, to be entrepreneurs, to be in the social media space, to be in global mainstream media space, because we are the voice. And if we are not in the forefront, we risk having other people tell the story on our behalf. So taking up space is important, so that we actually place ourselves in platforms where we can tell our story the way that we want to tell it. And I think there's a lot more we can do in different fields. I mean, come on, I'm a content creator myself, and I just speaking on content creation in itself, it's literally a platform where whatever that you are putting out is being seen and perceived by the whole world. So I know I need to understand as an individual that I have a personal responsibility in branding Africa. I have a personal responsibility in portraying Africa in the way that I want it to be perceived. So if I'm constantly putting out content that you know, that is derogatory, if I'm constantly putting content that puts down Africans, content that speaks down on Africans, content that just looks down on Africa in general, I'm literally doing an injustice to myself, my society, my African continent, and my future generation. So I think first and foremost, we are doing well in terms of taking up space. We have a lot of young people nowadays going for tertiary educations, young people becoming entrepreneurs, young people starting out businesses, you know, young people getting into politics and being trying to be in the forefront of where business is taking place. But also we need to make sure that we are very responsible with what we put out, whether it's by our words, whether it's our tweets, whether it's our Instagram posts, whether it's our Facebook posts, whether it's our whatever that we are putting out, even our qualifications in the academic field in itself, we need to be excellent. You know, we owe it to ourselves to be excellent and to produce work that is excellent. Because if we are not excellent, we are not going to attract any useful attention from the global world or from the globe in itself. So I think it's really important to take up space, be involved in initiatives that are available in your country, in your nation, be involved in media, what media is doing, read, study, do research, talk. If you have an opinion, share. But most importantly, make sure that you are sharing it in a responsible manner, because at the end of the day, you don't want to say something that will make the people or the international market to perceive Africa in a negative manner. So we need to make sure that we sell, as you said, it's all about branding. We are the ones to sell the brand. We are the one to make the brand attractive. So when you sell a brand, you talk about the good of the brand, the reach that the brand has to offer. So I think there's a lot more that we can do in various fields, whether it's in academia, whether it's in sports, whether it's in content creation, whether it's in business, whether it's in entrepreneurship. And I think even this current pandemic, I'll constantly refer back to it, but I think it has really helped ignite that spark in us to really make us wake up and say, listen, anything can happen at any time. What's going to happen to our economy if a pandemic like this was to happen in the next 5 years? Are we going to experience it just like we're experiencing it now, where we are saying, I was not ready, it happened, I was not prepared, I don't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. We need to place ourselves in positions where we are ready for opportunities, we are ready to create opportunities, and realize the potential that we have. As I said, Africa is rich, and one thing about it is rich with young people that are full of potential to do so much.
Wow, wow, that was so powerful. You know, as we were speaking, I was just reminded of one of my favorite authors by the name Adesina. She says, we have not even sold ourselves to ourselves.
Mm,
So I think the
mm,
starting point is that is for Africans to walk the talk. We talk about
yeah,
buy African, you know, buy an African
yeah,
product to support an African. But how many people are consuming African products as we speak?
yeah,
we
yeah.
we make noise on social media to say buy an African product, support an African. But are you using an African product? You are using
Yes.
an Android phone from China to actually type buy an African, yet you claim to be supporting African products. So yeah, I think that's the starting point to say we need to walk the talk. We need to walk
Yeah,
the talk. Make sure
yeah,
everything you say reflects that you're an African. I always say, if you look at me like now, this is a book by an African author from Ghana. I read African stuff because I want to hear what they have to say. Their stories
yeah,
relate more to what I'm going through because we are all Africans. So I think it's
yeah,
high time for us to start saying, enough is enough. It's time for me to consume and make it normal to buy from an African, because when I buy
yeah,
from an African, I'm not only helping him or her, but I'm also adding
yeah.
value to the country. So, Joy, going to this other interesting debate that is always being held, people are saying Africans can't provide solutions for themselves, but I do believe that African problems require African solutions. So, do you think that supporting African innovations, or Afro solutions rather, will actually help us to rebrand Africa or to put it on a better position, on the global media?
I mean, definitely, yeah. I always say, like, I'd give an example of two people that are sick. Just because you have a medication that worked on person A, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work on person B. Even though the medication in itself has been proven to work, at the end of the day, you need to factor in the symptoms of person B. You need to factor in the health status of person B, the environment that person B is in. It's the same concept. You can't apply the same principles that are working in Western countries and think that they're going to address African problems, because we have our own unique challenges, we have our own unique problems. And it's very important that we support the innovations that are focusing on Afro solutions, because at the end of the day, we need to factor in solutions that cater for our people, solutions that we can relate with, solutions that are relevant to us. Just because a technique worked in the United States, it doesn't mean it's going to work in Zimbabwe. Just because a vaccination or whatever is working in people that live in Australia, it doesn't mean it's going to work for people in South Africa. There's a whole lot of dynamics that have to be factored in. So I'm definitely for the idea that we should definitely support Afro solutions, but also most importantly, let us not be naive. We are not saying, I think sometimes when you speak about Afro solutions, people think you are negating every single beautiful innovation that is out there in the world that could be used to our advantage as Africans. And by no means we are saying that. Definitely, I believe that if something is working and we can prove it on our own systems to see that it actually works, there is no harm in taking it in. There is no harm in exploring it. You know what I'm saying? But we should leave out the dependency mentality where whenever there's a problem, we are running to see what United States is doing for us to to make our own decisions. We should run away from the narrative that Africans can't innovate, Africans can't solve, Africans can't manufacture, Africans can't process, Africans can't do A, B, and C. It's high time that we try to do it ourselves. And as you said, there's already so many African businesses that are booming and that have boomed even in this current season to show that it can be done. And they obviously attend to the African market. They attend to the African need. We understand the market better because we live here. We understand the need better because we have experienced it. We have lived in this world or in this continent. So I think it's very important to support Afro solutions, but at the same time, let us not negate um, every other possible solution that could come from elsewhere in the name of we are sticking to what is produced in Africa. At the end of the day, life is a community, and I want to believe that by us being Africa forward, by us advocating for Africa, we are not saying we want to do everything on our own. At the end of the day, we have a global world, and we want people to love and accept each other all over the world. We want people to collaborate. We want people to work together. We want a society where we can be in one room and no person feels lesser than. And I think it doesn't work if we completely isolate ourselves and want to literally do everything ourselves. If there is some lessons that we can take from other countries, by all means, let's do that. For example, there was a case with Madagascar, if I'm not mistaken, where during this whole pandemic thing, they were actually saying that they have found a cure, but Madagascar, to some people it could be no, it's not. This is not Madagascar, this is Zimbabwe. This is not Madagascar, this is South Africa. Therefore we can't listen to it. At the end of the day, in as much as we would want South African solutions to be relevant to South African problems, if Madagascar or Zimbabwe is providing a solution that can work for South Africa, we should be able to adopt it. You get what I'm saying? We should be humble enough to adopt what is working, but at the same time be strong enough to not create a dependency mentality where we can't stand on our own and we can't innovate on our own. And I think we are on a good path, slowly but surely. But I definitely believe that the current generation is trying to change the narrative. And as you said, the only way to do it is to be involved. If you have an idea, bring it up, be innovative. And if you see an idea that's being initiated, support it by all means. If it's working, let's endorse it. Let's not keep quiet about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I do support in everything that you have said. I think that's what we learned. We need to learn to do, to say if there is an alternative African solution to a Western product or probably a Western medicine, why should we buy that, leaving an African solution that can actually work in the same way as the one that you are buying? So I
True.
always say, for me, I would rather die testing an African, medicine, rather than consuming a Western medicine that I don't even know where it came from, what's their agenda. So yeah, I think we need to learn to embrace what we have. I think Africa is enough. Africa is
Yeah,
enough. Africa has
yeah,
adequate resources to provide itself, but it's simply that is poorly managed. And it's not our
yeah.
fault as young people. That's why we are here to try and change the narrative. And I
Yeah,
like the part where you are saying we shouldn't be naive to say we are now sticking to African solutions only. Like, what the world is a global community, and we need each other. We know Chinese can provide this, Africans can provide this, but I think it's all about us appreciating what each country is providing. And
yeah,
sadly, Africa gives out more than what it gets. That's where
yeah,
the problem is.
definitely.
We give out a
Yeah,
lot and we get so little, and we get
yeah,
them at a higher cost. So there is another debate, Joe. When you mentioned about dependency syndrome, it just hit me to say there's been an ongoing debate about Africa's education system becoming irrelevant, and many believe that it does not promote Afro responsibility, but it creates a
mm,
dependency syndrome, like what you said. So do you think, there is this education system is a contribution to some of the biggest African problems that we have? And does it mean if we are to change, if it is that we change the education system to fit the local needs of Africans, is it going to change the brand performance of Africa? or is it going to remain the same? What's your take on, education being irrelevant and not being applicable to the African context?
Yeah, I mean, I think education is a broad spectrum. You know what I'm saying? And I think in the African context in itself, or I will speak obviously of my experience as a South African. In South Africa in itself as a nation, in as much as we can say we have this one education system, at the end of the day, we need to recognize that it's different in different areas for different reasons. We still have what we call public and private education. Those are two different kind of systems. In as much as the regulations might be the same, the standards might be the same here and there, but at the end of the day, you can't really compare someone who is a product of public education to someone who is a product of private education. So that in itself is a distinction. So now when we generalize and say the entire education system isn't working, which part are we actually referring to? Are we referring to the public? Are we referring to the private? But I think just to sum it all up together, because at the end of the day, the majority is obviously consuming from public education. I want to believe I'm in a public university myself. University of Cape Town is a public university, and I think definitely it is. I could say that the system is becoming a little bit irrelevant. I will give a practical example of what happened now in the season where students have to travel back home and leave their university campuses and now have to adapt to what we call online learning. I think it was a very interesting observation to make, to realize that you are a university student in this affluent university that is the best in Africa, where there's an assumption that you're exposed to computers every day. You know how to use the technology and so on. But when you are given a chance to now do the so-called online learning using the same technology that you've been exposed to all this time, however, in your own place as an independent individual, it somewhat now becomes a whole lot challenging than what we expected. And I think that was quite an interesting observation to make, to say, in as much as we can be proud and say, I'm in this affluent university, blah, 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 this and this, at the same time, it has kind of instilled a dependency mentality in us as students and as young people. Because now you are given a chance to do online learning by yourself in your home, in your own space, maybe at your own time. But because you are so dependent on the system, you are so dependent on the lecturer in the room, you are so dependent on having classmates in a room, you are so dependent on having a tutor, you are so dependent on waking up and taking a bath, taking a bus, going to a classroom, sitting in a group, doing a tutorial. It all of a sudden becomes so hard for you to adapt to having to do everything by yourself in your own time frame. You get what I'm saying? So I think that's where you can really say that the system is becoming, or is and has been, irrelevant. I don't want to say it's becoming irrelevant. I want to say that it has been sort of irrelevant, because if it did not prepare us for times as these, then what good is it anyway? So I think it's really time to definitely change the education system. The world is moving. I mean, we're already experiencing the fourth industrial revolution right now, and if we are not changing the system and trying to optimize it to cater for such a development and for such an industry, then what are we actually saying? It doesn't make sense in 2020 to have a university student that has never seen a computer in their lives before, to have a university student that cannot code, to have a university student that does not understand the medium of language that is being used highly in the institution that they're learning. So I think we really need to start factoring in all of those things and say, what can we do to make it better? How can we make ourselves to be relevant in the next 5 to 10 years, especially competing with the global market or the global education system? So I think, to get back to your point, it is not becoming irrelevant. It is irrelevant and has been irrelevant. What it needs to become is to become relevant, and how to do that is to literally face the challenges that we have, and to be true and honest with ourselves that, listen, we have a lot of unemployed graduates that are not able to think or to be entrepreneurs or to start their own businesses because they were not trained. The education that they received did not train their minds to think along that route. So how do we change the narrative? How do we change the way we are teaching our students? How do we change the way courses are structured in classrooms? How do we change the way subjects are structured and regulated? You get what I'm saying? So I think, honestly speaking, there's a lot to do in the education space. It doesn't make me happy to see so many graduates unemployed, because at the end of the day, it does question the relevance of our education system. And I think at the end of the day, it does, these things are very politically related, and it takes time to change systems, because these systems have been built for years and years and years. So it's not going to take a year or one day to change it. But I think the change also needs to start with us as young people, with us as the consumers of such a system. We need to voice out our opinions. What are we not comfortable with regards to the education that we are getting? What do we want our universities to do? What do we want our schools to do in terms of making it relevant in today's modern world and in the way the world is moving, especially towards the fourth industrial revolution? So I think we also need, and I always go back to the fact that at the end of the day, we can blame systems all we want, but we need, as young people, to have a personal responsibility to taking part in being the solutions towards the problem. If you are using your cell phone to be on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter all day long, but you never have 10-15 minutes to learn how to code, or to learn to learn how to engineer whatever. You also need to ask yourself, what role am I actually playing in worsening the problem or in being a solution? So I think we also need to have that personal individual responsibility to say we have a role to play, and we have a voice in terms of what we allow ourselves to consume and whatnot. So it is a broad subject, honestly speaking, but I would say that it is high time that we change the whole system. And I think, man, I could go on and on, but as a South African, just the whole divide between public and private education in itself is a problem. And I want to believe you guys have the same in Zimbabwe as well. I have Zimbabwean friends who talk about public schooling and private schooling. Just that, to begin with, is a problem, and we should have a problem with that. Why? What can we do to bridge the gap? Why should we have two different systems in one country, but we expect the same products, or the same individuals coming from these two different systems to be now competing in one institution of tertiary education? It doesn't make sense. They have different backgrounds. They have different advantages and disadvantages. So I think it needs to start within our nations in themselves to bridge the divide, to bridge the gap, but at the same time also just look at the overall education system in Africa. Like, we always talk about how Chinese kids can create cell phones and Chinese kids can create machines. What is stopping us from doing the same? If we have the resources, if we have the minds, if we have the potential, the passion, what is actually stopping us from doing the same? Who says, as Tendai, you can't build a factory and start engineering cell phones? You know?
Mm-hmm.
To the Great African Leadership Series, where we feature great inspirational speeches and quotes from African leaders.
One of my biggest passions was to develop Africa.
As I started to travel back home to Africa, visiting my grandparents and family members, I'm starting to realize that they're living in an area where there's no electricity, no running water. This is the same environment in which I was raised and grew up. And I come back 20 years later and it still looks the same. No change whatsoever. And one of the biggest issues that I saw was that Africans don't control their own resources. That was sad to me, because when you look at how much Africa does for the rest of the world and what it gets back in return, pulled, taken advantage of, and no one's listening. And it's going to take the younger generation to be able to make that difference. So we decided to create a cryptocurrency called Acoin. It's Africa's coin. It just sounds like Acoin. So I felt that if we created something of a platform that created complete transparency, it will get rid of all the corruption, which will completely change and help the system of government, and it'll also empower all the young people. But the key is it will create the unification and get rid of the divides.
So we wanted to be a part of the leading groups that came into Africa that provided electricity for the rural areas. You know, the rural areas for me was the main focus because that's like the heartbeat of Africa. The majority of the population is in the rural areas, and those are the areas that don't have no electricity whatsoever. So we figured if we get into those areas, it could be the beginning stages of creating Africa's future from an infrastructural standpoint. But the energy in that area had to happen. So you need street lights, you need basic electricity, you need home systems, and that's what we decided to come through and decide to offer. And from that, of course, other opportunities always come aboard. I want to be remembered for being someone that led the charge to creating Africa's future in a way to where, you know, the people more likely controlled it again, utilize the resources that everyone benefit, and also more than anything, a place where it's going to be comfortable to live, safe to live, properly governed continent, and people who want to be a part of that lifestyle that Africa has to offer. You know, be able to travel and visit from all over the world, come to Africa without fear, knowing that they can live a great life.
And share this video with friends and family to support the channel.
Okay, so Tendai, your mic is off.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Joy, for reminding me. I thought I unmuted
أما
myself.
الآن أعزائي يشرفنا أن ندعو النجم العالمي الفائز
Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, so we are back. We are back. Apologies for that hiccup. I had a power cut. You know the usual African problems. But we are trying to change the narrative. Things will be okay like now. Yeah. So I'm back now, and we just want to get into question and answer. If you guys have questions, just ask, and then I enjoy and myself can get to answer those questions. And if you guys want to add something, we are Africans. This is a mission that we are all embarking on. It's not easy. It requires all of us to cooperate, all of us to work together, to put individual efforts to work as a team, so that we can rebrand Africa. So it's very, very key and important. So Joy, I can't remember where I left, but I will just try to see, because when I had a power cut, I think we were talking about the way forward, because you had shared something relating to change, the need for us to change and to be the change makers, to be the change agents, to be the pioneers of change in the society. Yeah. So now we would want to map the way forward. After having said all this about the African education system, private and public, after having talked about everything that affects Africa in terms of rebranding and all things that we are facing, would want to map the way forward to say, so when I leave the conversation today, what am I going to do as an individual, and what are you encouraging other young people out there to do, to say, because every little effort counts. It doesn't matter, where you are. By simply using your mobile device, you can actually change the world. So we would want to actually propose solutions to the problems that we have. How best can we build and revive the brand that we see as Africans, so that the world get to appreciate it from the perception that we also have as Africans?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would go back to what I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the roles of young people, where I shared about how it's important for people to take up space. But I think to make it more practical, it's a question of, you need to personalize the problem, for you to feel like you have a role to play in making, in solving it or in being the solution. The moment it stops being a Africa thing or a Zimbabwe thing or the government thing, the moment it becomes a Joyce thing or a Tendai thing, the moment you take ownership of what's actually happening, you see yourself as part of it. I think that is the first step, because you align your mind now to start thinking, if this is my problem, if I'm not happy with this, if you personalize it, what can I then do to change the situation? And I think what we can do is obviously relative and different for all of us. We are all at different stages of our lives. We have access to different resources. We have, I guess, different advantages and disadvantages in terms of the environments in which we are placed. So it honestly starts with you identifying where you are at this current moment. What are the problems that you are observing? and then you narrow it down. Of all those problems that you are experiencing, what can you do to solve the problem? For example, you could be living in the rurals of South Africa or Zimbabwe where they don't have clean water or there's no water at all. So the question could be, if this is my community and my hometown, and the biggest problem that my people are facing is lack of water or lack of clean water, with the knowledge that I have, maybe as a graduate, or with the knowledge that I have as a young person who reads, a young person who does research, a young person who who's out there trying to find information, what can I do to solve this problem? Which stakeholders can I speak to if I feel like I need a financial injection? I think sometimes, we focus so much on how we don't have anyone to help. There's no one who wants to do this. But at the same time, if you show initiative to actually solving the problem, you'll be surprised how there are people that are willing to back up your idea. There are fellow Africans that are saying, listen, young man, listen, young woman, we see your vision, we see the problem that you have what can I say, you have pointed out, and we want to support in actually solving the problem. So it literally starts as small as that. I don't want to make it a continent thing. Don't I think sometimes it's really hard to solve a problem if you think about it from the complex level. I think the best way to solve a problem is to break it down in small compartments and start saying, what part of this problem can I solve right now with what I have, with the resources that I have? I'll speak, for example, on education. I come from the rurals of Limpopo, as I said. My mom happens to be one of those people who owns a huge, I want to say crash. I'm not sure what you guys call it, maybe in Zimbabwe, but a huge crash, which is like a daycare center to prepare young toddlers before they actually go for their primary education. And she has over 100, 200, 300 of toddlers that she's taking care of. At the end of the day, they teach those kids different subjects and blah blah blah. But for example, that in itself is a place to start for me, because it's now personal. I have personalized it in terms of, what can we do to make sure that the kids that we are producing from this institution are way or 10 times better than the other kids that are being produced from whatever institution when they go to primary education. So we make sure that, okay, with what we are teaching them, we teach them things that are relevant and current. We make sure that they are aware of computers. They are familiar with computers. They are familiar with the language of computers, young as they are, before they even enter primary level. So for me, as an undergraduate who has an opportunity to travel from time to time to go home, in those holiday times that I have the chance and the opportunity to now use my skill set, use the knowledge that I've acquired all these years in a tertiary institution to teach and educate the staff that handles that institution, to say, this is how you can handle it. This is how to best take care of the toddlers health-wise. This is how to make your environment sterile. This is how you can teach them in terms of them being familiar with technology, and to give them computer lessons. Like, I'm just giving a basic scenario of what you can do with what you have at your level. Don't look at the problem in terms of ESCOM is responsible for electricity. Oh my God, there's nothing we can do. In your household, in your own house, if there is no electricity, what alternative do you have that can make sure that food is being cooked, that can make sure that there's a light, there's light in the room? You get what I'm saying? Like, it literally starts from there. So I definitely think there's a lot more that we can do, as I said, but look at it from a personal perspective. What can you do with where you are right now and with what you have? And if it's a thing of, you are, say, an unemployed graduate, the skill set that you learn, the subject that you learn in university, if you can get a job to work for a company, what can you do with the knowledge that you received, whether it's in the subject of accounting, whether it's in the subject of law, whether it's in the subject of science or agriculture, for example? I want to believe that, there has to be something that you can start of yourself from the knowledge that you have, because, as I said, we are trying to go away with the to do away with the dependency mindset of blaming the government and blaming the system and blaming this and this. we as young people, there's so much that we can do where we are with what we have, and it's all about opening up your eyes. There are a lot of problems, so you can never say there's nothing I can do. There's a lot of problems everywhere. You were just talking about connectivity right now, Wi-Fi and network issues. If you studied computer science, or you studied IT, or you studied engineering, what can you do with your expertise and with your knowledge to help contribute to solving the problem? So let's look at what we have, where we are, and the best that we can do at the moment, and that's how we grow.
Wow, thank you very much, Joya. That was a powerful presentation. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I understand you are busy, you are a student, so you'll be working on quite a lot of stuff. And by the way, Joy, like what she mentioned earlier, she also has her own YouTube channel. Is Joy Titus, right?
Yeah, so I'm Joy Titus on my YouTube channel, on all my platforms, even on Facebook. I'm Joy Titus with a Facebook page as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so go follow her because she's producing amazing stuff. And for ladies, I'm sure you can see, I think she's one of the ladies that I've seen with natural hair. She doesn't do Brazilian, she's purely African. Yeah. So yeah, so ladies, you can go check her videos on how you can also have, natural hair that is as long as hairs. So Joy Titus, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you. And on behalf of all the young people who tuned into to the session and we're going to view the video even after, I would like to say thank you. We celebrate you today, and we are making it a culture to celebrate our fellow Africans, to celebrate those young people who are actually doing exceptionally well in our societies. So do you have maybe in 10-15 seconds any parting words? Because I know we would speak until forever, but I know you are loaded with wisdom, so probably you have one or two sentences that you'd like to leave young people with. I'll just give you 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. But first of all, I just want to thank you so much, Tendai. Thank you for this great opportunity. I don't take it lightly at all. I don't take it for granted. So thank you so much for having me on your platform. I'm really proud of the work that you're doing in Success Sport, and I wish you all the best. And I'll be here rooting for you. And to everyone who has tuned in, thank you so much as well for tuning into today's talk show. I want to believe that a lot more can come out of this talk show. Who knows? In the near future, you might actually be owning a media house where you have different talk shows or whatever. So I see the future that this can become. But I think my last words would be, let us see yourself when you talk about Africa, and I'm talking to young people and everyone who are viewing and tuned into this. When you talk about Africa, see yourself in the equation. When you talk about African problems, see yourself in the equation. And when you think about African solutions, think of yourself in the equation. You have a role to play. You have a personal responsibility to play. So don't look down on yourself. You have great potential. There is a lot more that you can offer as a young person, whether it be your expertise in the academic field, whether it's your expertise in the arts industry, in the sports industry, in content creation, whatever the case may be. I want you to look at yourself and see the value that you have in you, the value that God has placed in you. There's something that you have to offer to the world, and do not deny yourself the opportunity of expanding. Do not deny the world the opportunity of receiving from what you have to offer. I believe in you. I believe in Tendai. I believe in Success Sports. I believe in us collaborating and working together, supporting each other. And I think at the end of the day, I believe in Africa as a whole, and I believe that we can rebrand Africa. It is possible. We are doing it. We are starting to do it. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what the future holds for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much, Joy Titus. So to all those who tuned in, I remember people are saying, you said you have some interesting news to share, blah blah. What is it? So to everyone who's going to show these to share these episodes, we're going to be having 4 episodes a month. To everyone who's going to share these episodes, you take at least 5, 5 friends. We're going to be giving out, this. I know most of you would want to see the regalia, and for Joy, obviously, you also have your own. You don't need to share. So I'm going to be giving out this regalia courtesy of our partners. So if you share by end of September, if you have the highest number of likes and views on a particular episode, you would definitely earn yourself either a hoodie, a sweater, a t-shirt, a cap, or probably something else that you won't be expecting. Thank you very much, Chas. And for Joy, I won't say it, here on the live video, but you definitely have something of your own. So thank you very much, Joy, once again, and thank you very much to everyone who tuned in. Share this video, share the link in your WhatsApp groups in whichever platform that you are in, and constantly check for updates on my page, and also follow Joy Titus so that you get to see what she's doing. So from me and Joy Titus, it's until next time. Bye bye, guys.